Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience, where we discuss ways how we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience, and we have an awesome guest with a new angle that we've never had on Branding the Experience, so I'm really excited to tell you about her. Her name is Michele PW. She goes by PW because nobody can pronounce this last name. Maybe we'll have some jokes on that later. But I'm really proud to call her a fellow writer and category director for Podcast Magazine. She is a best-selling, award-winning author, writer, and entrepreneur. She wrote you wrote 5 books in the Love-Based Business series, Learn How to Read, Ken, that share how to sell more with love and build a solid, profitable business on a foundation of love. And I'm going to come at that from a branding perspective because I think that's perfect. In addition, she owns a copywriting and marketing company that has sold $50 million worth of products and services. She's also the host of the Right Inspiration podcast. Michele, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Not as excited as I am. You know, I've wanted to have you on the show for a while. I really like the love-based selling aspect. You know, we talk about branding being or telling your unique story and connecting with people. And you've obviously had success with that. So yeah, I'll just ask bluntly, how do you connect more with your customers with love?
Well, there's a couple things. So first off, the way I've done it, so how this works for me is my ideal clients, a lot of them are people who really aren't comfortable with the traditional way of marketing and selling. They don't really like a lot of that, they feel like it feels very hypey and salesy and inauthentic. So that's hence where the love base came in with that. But for people who want to use the love based and want to connect with their clients, to me, I feel like you're actually connecting more deeply. And the reason why is because, it's very easy to persuade with fear. I shouldn't say easy. Yeah. It's easier to persuade with fear. I mean, the thing is that what you have, in order to persuade anybody to do anything, you have to tap into their emotions. And tapping into fear is like a fast, quick way to get them to take action, because because fear can be very motivating. I mean, when you think about the whole, the emotion of fear, it comes about, it's a very powerful emotion, and it's designed to control our emotions. Because think about it, when we first feel fear, it immediately, it stops us in our tracks, and then it causes us to fight, flight, or freeze. So it's actually altering our behavior in the moment. It's a very powerful emotion. So if you can harness that emotion and for whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're talking about it from a business standpoint in order to get your clients to buy from you, but quite honestly, this is also getting your kids to go to bed at a certain bedtime. Sure. I mean, we're always persuading. So when you just focus on fear, you don't have to go that deep. You just have to, it can be very surface, because it's an easy emotion to reach. It's an easy emotion to kind of grab your ideal clients with, or maybe they're not so ideal. That's the other thing too. When you use fear, you tend to spread a bigger net. So you're casting a wider net. So you end up getting a lot more people that may not be your perfect clients, which in the moment, getting the money is great, but down the road, when they're not working out so well, it may not be so great. So with the love base, though, you have, when you start really wanting to connect and sell versus love, you really want to get to the heart of who your ideal clients are and what really motivates them and what really keeps them up at night, and really, connect to them on a deep level, because only by connecting to them on a deep level are you going to be able to persuade with love. So it's actually a better way, from what you teach with the branding, integrating some of the love-based stuff would actually be really powerful, because it really is about the story, your ideal client story, and really their values, their core beliefs, really getting to know them as a person instead of just a number.
Yeah. No, I love what you said. And this just, confirms that I needed to have you on this show, because you let off with with something I really believe in, is that you rarely should ever sell through fear.
Yeah.
Unless you're selling security systems, or maybe
Even
handguns.
with security systems, you don't have to sell with fear.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's really, I mean, you always can. It's always available to you. I'm not going to say don't,
Hmm.
but it's not. I do think it's better to not. And part of the reason why I personally think it's better is not, is I think, as you would say too, it erodes your brand over time, because when you sell with fear, what
Yeah,
happens? Well, the next day people wake up like a and they're like, what did I do? And that's where you get the buyer's remorse. That's where you get people in that
right.
aren't your perfect clients. So, but when you go deeper, when you work a little harder, you go a little deeper, and you really try to attract your perfect ideal client, then you're going to build a business full of your perfect ideal
Yeah.
clients, and you're gonna it's gonna be so much better from a branding standpoint.
I would even go so far as to say you may turn your ideal prospect off with fear. And I'll give you an
You could.
example. Yeah, I'll give you an example, because I really want your take on this. I have a business that I have done business with for a long time, and it's a great organization. They offer an awesome service, and they really do put their money where their mouth is. They do some great things, but they always sell with fear, and it's not to give away the company. It's not a security firm, but it's in that same ballpark per se. And when they sell and they brand their marketing, they always lead with, this could happen and leave you screwed, basically.
Right.
And they paint that picture. And I've been telling, my friend who is senior vice president for that firm for years, who frankly sells that product awesomely. He really does a good job with that. But his approach is, I'm going to take this same fear type of presentation, and you're either going to get it and we're going to do business, or you're not going to get it right away and I'm going to just move on. And I always have been telling him that, there's so many other aspects of your service, aspects of, you could sleep well at night. You don't have to worry about this crap anymore. It's a moneymaker too. If it's a business to business play, you can make money with this and do good things. But he never leads with that. And I say, you know what?
Yeah.
What happens psychologically sometimes, even with your ideal client, is they don't want to hear fear. They go into a place where, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about the bad things that could happen. I want to go to my happy place. So you go away. I'm going to go over here. So is that possible too? If you go down that fear road, couldn't you be turning off some of your perfect clients?
Yeah, so there's two things here going on. First off, there was a very famous study that they did. It was dentists trying to get like elementary school kids to brush their teeth more, and they had three groups. And so one group, they just said brush your teeth more. And then a second group, they said brush your teeth more, or you're gonna they just told them, like, you're gonna have problems. You know
Your
they're
teeth
gonna
are
get
going to
to, they
fall out and you're going to
explain
be
the health
ugly. Yeah.
problems. Well, they didn't go quite that far. It was more moderate, but they did
Yeah.
actually say, like, this is really important to do, because if you don't, then, you can end up with tooth decay, blah, blah, blah. And then the third group, they showed all these really ugly pictures of, like, teeth falling out and big holes in their gum, they were just horrible pictures. And then they said, so at the end of that, the kids that had the horrible teeth, actually saw the pictures. They went, oh my gosh, I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to brush my teeth 5 times a day. I'm never going to stop brushing my teeth. And so they were so at the end of that, when you measured it, those were the most motivated. But then when they came back like a month later, do you know which group actually changed their habits? It was
Yeah.
the middle group.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was the first group where they just said brush your teeth is a good thing. They didn't change their habits. But then they also didn't change their habits when they saw the disgusting pictures, because our brains actually, and think about this, I mean, this is why, trauma people, a lot of times they can't even sometimes, I shouldn't say they can't always, because sometimes it's not true, but a lot of times people's brains will shut off, and they don't and they don't actually show all the, a trauma, if it's like they don't remember like all the pieces of it. They might just remember one or two things, but and not obviously not all the time, but a lot of times, you don't remember. Your brain actually tries to forget what's going on, because it's too hard to function on a day-to-day basis when you have that, when you're constantly assaulted by that much stuff. So that's why, and I should not mean not everybody. I mean, I know there's obviously people out there that remember everything, but but then there's also people that have a lot of amnesia around it as well, and that's their brain protecting
Right.
them from the trauma. So we are biologically, our brains biologically do work to try to cut back or minimize some of the bad stuff. And that's why leading with fear is not, and that much fear, and just focusing on that is not always the best way to do that. And the other thing I want to say is that people buy transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they move away from pain, that's very powerful, but what they're buying is the transformation. They're not necessarily buying the get away from fear thing. They're buying the transformation. They're buying the cure. They're buying the solution. So if you just focus on the fear piece of it, you've lost all what they're really buying, because when you actually, if you are going to use fear and you have that in there, that's kind of almost a way to get them attention and get them paying attention and get them emotionally invested. But then you got to switch to hope and transformation, or they're not going to buy.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. In fact, when I do culture building, not just branding, I talk about the idea of, in fact, I use an article that I read years ago. I forget the article. I know I'll remember it later. I'll just shout it out. But it was an article that was entitled Change or Die. And it actually talks about business change in the analogy of a person that has been told that you have a serious ailment, and all you need to do is change your habits, stop smoking, stop drinking, stop overeating, something, and you'll live. You're at a point here where you could change your habits and be fine. But if you don't change your
Right.
habits, you will die. And in that study, it talks about that 8 out of 9 people, when faced with that, actually won't change their habit. They'll actually choose, I'm going to stay
Yes.
where I am, and I'm going to die. And part of that is doctors will say, if you don't do this, you're going to croak and you're going to be 6 feet under, and yada, yada, yada. And the problem with that is the fear shuts everything off. But they also said in
Yeah.
that article that a doctor that had tremendous success, over 70% of people actually did change their habits. What he did was refocus them and not talk about what could
Yes.
happen from a negative, but hey, wouldn't it be great when we get done with this that you're going to be able to play with your grandkids again, that you're going to be able to walk up those stairs with the laundry without even an issue, that you're going to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle at her wedding 8 months from now without a problem. And it refocuses them to, wow, my life could be awesome. I never really thought about that. And that's what we need to do in branding, is like you were saying, if you're focusing on the solution of, hey, you do this, this is what this is going to look like. Is that kind of what you're tapping into, Michele?
Yes, that's another way too. I mean, so basically what I think what this is all about is fear can get some short-term change, because that's what
Yeah.
it's designed. But in terms of a long-term, because you're absolutely right. I mean, because if you do just say you're going to die, I've heard that before too, that people won't change their habits. So, and also I think the other thing too, and this has to deal, and you just brought up the culture, and I did want to talk about this too. I'm a big believer that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you are
Mm-hmm.
using fear to sell, then, and you're bringing your clients in. So now you're bringing your clients in with fear. Fear is everywhere. So now you've got fear in your team and fear in this. And so the thing is that you have to, and part of the reason why I love working with the copywriting piece of it and the persuading and selling is because that's something that people usually default to. But if we can clean that up, and if we can focus on love, that's going to make it a lot easier to have our entire culture also be steeped in, and maybe it doesn't have to be love in terms of love like, when I say love too, I should say, because especially your people watching it, I don't mean just romantic love here.
Are we talking about
So
Match.com and
and Tinder
escort
and
firms and everything? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Yes. So it's not that at all. In fact, I did get this this philosophy in the Forbes, and it was an interesting conversation because the conversation was, he's had the same problem with love, and it's not so much love. It's about truth. So the thing is that part of this is standing in your truth, being authentic. That's what you're really doing. And so your team culture is the same way. You're authentic, whatever it is, you're authentic, and that is going throughout your whole business, going throughout your culture. And now it's going to make everything that much easier for you to sell and market yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to get off the culture bit in just a minute because I want to go back to copywriting, but I've seen this before. If you're going to sell with fear, odds are, internally you're also managing with fear, and that rarely works. Only in extreme cases, and in those cases, it's costing you a ton of money with a revolving door on your HR department. But let's go back to copywriting. Yeah, give me some examples of love-based messaging as you've seen it, and really focusing in, going back to what you said on the solution from a positive standpoint.
Right. So before I do that, I do want to just bring this up really fast too, because I think this is important as well. As I do want to talk a little bit about pain, because a lot of people are also thinking that when I say that we want to just do love-based copy, that means we just gloss over anything unpleasant, and that's not true. Remember what I said about truth. So your ideal clients are truly in pain, and to not acknowledge that pain is a form of spiritual bypass. I do believe I think it's very disrespectful. So I think we do need to acknowledge their pain and let them, and because then, think of how it is when, like, let's say you're crying, and because like maybe your dog died and you're crying, and somebody says to you, there it's going to be okay. Well, it's not really going to be okay. Your dog is dead and it's not coming back to life. But part of the reason why they're saying that is because they're uncomfortable with your crying. So you want to be comfortable with this so that you can do this. But there are people out there who are born and they can't feel pain. They actually can't feel pain. So, and what happens is they don't live very long, because pain is your body's way of telling you there's a problem. So I do feel like pain is a part of this life, and we need, and again, this is about truth, this is about acknowledgement, this is about being respectful. The problem comes in when you agitate it and turn it into fear and suffering. That's the line that we want to look at. It's fine to acknowledge it and talk about it and be with it. It's just, the more you kind of agitate it and try to mess with it, that's a problem. Now, in terms of examples, so here's a good example of like sort of the agitating versus this. So shame is another one. Not only just fear happens with selling, but shame is another one. So, and this is an example of shame, which is like, let's say you see these sometimes in like a frequently asked questions at the bottom of the sales page, where they'll say like, the question will be like, well, I don't have the time for this. And then the answer would be, well, obviously you don't feel obviously you don't take whatever seriously, because if you took it seriously, you would jump on this chance, and successful people find the time, and what's wrong with you? You obviously don't want to be successful. So that's a form of the kind of shaming fear base of the FAQ. So
it's kind of like example the parenting way, you're a terrible son if you don't do this.
And I think that's where a lot of this gets with business. Because I mean, it's all the same. It's like, that's what I mean. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So 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 if we look at the love-based side, then that this was done by some friends of mine. They were my clients too, and it worked out really well. Where they said, what if I don't have the time? And they say, look, what they were selling a coaching program that was about like, really up leveling. And they said, all right, look, if you're going to have a quantum leap, or I don't remember exactly what it was, like a quantum leap or an up level, you're going to hit some blocks, stuff's going to happen. It's, that's just part of the process. So, and you have to work through it. That's the only way you're going to get to the other side. And you might be in a place where you can't work through it. Maybe you are taking care of a sick mother. Maybe you do have kids that are too young. And maybe this is just not your year to be able to deal with the downs, because there will be downs. And if that's the case, then that's fine. We can be friends, and when you're ready, come back. But if you are ready, if you are ready to take the plunge because you want to up level and you don't care about that and you're ready to deal with it, then come on board. Let's do it. So you see, and this was very successful. I mean, every time they ran this program, they sold out. But you see, that's what kind of an idea of truth. Yeah. So we're all adults. Tell them the truth, and then let them make the decision. And if they do make the decision, they're going to be that much bought into the program, versus if they don't make the, if you try to lie to them and say, oh my God, this is going to be great, it's going to be so easy. Then when they do hit a block, they're not going to want to work through it. They're going to check out because they didn't realize it going in.
Yeah, that was one of the very, very first things in so-called consulting school that they taught us is if you've got to force your way into getting somebody to be a client, you're gonna be a miserable consultant for however long that engagement runs, because they don't want to be there.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then the other thing they taught us is basically if the client thinks that it's his or her idea and not yours, you're going to be a lot more successful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So from a, give me, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Give me an example of one of, your roughest love-based client stories where, it was all fear or all shame, and you had to slap somebody with a velvet glove and say, all right, we need to focus on love and truth. Give me one of those stories. Come on, we're friends here.
I don't actually work that way because to me, I feel like you do have to buy into it. Yeah. It's not very love-based if I force you. I mean, think about it.
But you don't have to force me, but if you make me think that it's my idea.
So the way I do it is yes, this is actually run into a lot. And so one of the way here's a place where it falls down. If you're in the middle of doing, there aren't as many of those kind of big, like these, a big product launch. A few years back they were much more popular, that, they had multiple videos and they were a $2,000 program. They were quite big. And I had many clients that were in that. And typically, the thing is that, you don't always know when you get into a launch what's going to happen. Yeah. And sometimes, things don't, sometimes things don't work out as like you hoped. So if you get it,
that never happens to me, by the way. Things always
it never
happen.
happens.
Exactly the freaking
exactly.
Way.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, especially now.
Well, just pretend. just pretend. So usually what happens is when if they're near the end and their numbers aren't where they want to be. So then even if they came into this with this idea that they wanted to really, focus on love and they didn't want to do the manipulating thing, when they are near the end of something and the numbers aren't there, they will want to slip into fear. Not always, but sometimes. This is where this comes out. And then they start like, wanting to ramp it up, wanting to like, well, what can we do? What can we say? And, and I do have those in my bag of tricks. And so I would say to them, okay, so, we can go that route. And this is one way to do it. But, if you do that, you've kind of just thrown everything else out the window. And it's going to be that much harder for your clients to trust you, because your business goes beyond this launch. So, a better way, there are still other things we can do to course correct. Don't get me wrong but doing it without slipping into that sort of fear and desperation energy. So maybe we add, another webinar, maybe we add some, more board. I mean, there's other things. And so I usually try to counsel them to do that, and then just kind of hold firm, because if they can do that, then usually what happens is, even if they don't, it usually all works out. So either it works out, maybe even if that particular launch, the money they didn't get the numbers, maybe maybe we do something after, like a downsell or an upsell, and that works out really well, or something 6 months later. Because the thing is once you start shifting around on the different energies, that's what messes everything up, and then people don't know what to do. But if you can stay true of it, and just know it's all going to work out. Maybe you don't see it right now, but it will. Just give it a little time, and a little creativity. Then that's really the best. That's really the best way.
Right. Right. Well, speaking of best way, is there, without giving up all of your expertise and trade secrets, is there one tip that you would give our audience that would help them have better love-based copy, to better sell with a good feeling rather than a negative?
Talk to your ideal clients like you would a friend. So as we kind of started off the beginning, like really knowing who they are. So I mean, you could write a love letter. We've done it that way. If that feels too
Yeah.
corny to you, just write
It
to them
does
as
to
you would
me,
a
but
friend.
not to everybody. But go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't have to write a love letter, but just imagine that you're sitting across from a friend, and you truly sincerely care about what happens to them. So you're writing a letter with that in mind, because that's really what we're coming from. I mean, most of us, that's what we're coming from. We have a product, program, service, and offering that we know can help, and we can see people who have a pain in front of us, and we want to help them. And so if we allow that, the being of service to motivate us, versus like, oh my God, I need money, because the rent is due.
Yeah.
If we can, and I get that, I do get that. So we're all human and we all have that. But if we just focus on, I need money because rent is due, we're just focused on us, and people aren't. That's not very persuasive. But if we focus on, all right, I have this great, awesome service. I know it can really help you because I see that you have this pain. This is how. I mean, it's not 100%, obviously. I mean, there's just, there's lots and lots of factors, but the more we can get out of what's going on in our own heads, and focus on the service to others, the better that will be.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea, that approach of, because I'm never gonna write a love letter, but
Not even to your wife, right?
if I wrote my wife a love letter, and don't get me wrong, I love my wife dearly, and I tell her that every day. But if I wrote my wife a love letter, she'd probably go, "Who in the hell are you? and who wrote this letter?"
And what did you do
Uh,
to my husband?
yeah, exactly. But that speaks to being authentic too, because while I would never
Yes.
probably write a love letter, I do have a certain level of empathy for anybody in my family,
Yes.
or a friend, and would be able to write the proper message to that friend or family member in a tough time. So I think that is awesome
Yes.
advice, and it also ties into your branding of, if you truly do have that empathy, you can't lie if you're not empathetic. But if you truly do have that empathy as a business, and finding the way to show that from a friend standpoint in your copy, yeah, that really could work, and I've seen that before.
Yes. You want to connect. The more you can connect, and I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're really doing. You're just
Yeah.
connecting on a human level, and just try, and so if the idea is to connect on a human level, and then just trust that it's all going to work itself out, including you financially. I mean, that's
Right.
important. So I don't want to lose sight of that.
Sure.
But if we can try to focus on the connection, and then just trust that, and surrender that it's going to work out, it generally does.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes you have to be creative, sometimes you have to move a little bit faster, but rarely does slipping into desperation ever really work
Yeah.
anyways. So it's probably better to ask questions like, what can I do? Ask your brain questions like, so what's the fastest way I can, get $5,000, or who do you think, if you ask questions that are more like, what if, or creative, problem solving, that puts your brain down a different path than the, oh my God, what am I going to do? Then that tends to shut off possibilities, and that's not what you want to do. You want to open up possibilities.
Right. Awesome points. Last question that I have for you, for those in our audience that could really use your expertise, how can they find you?
So michelepw.com, michelepw.com. That's got links to all the different places you can find me. And I do have, so you can also find all my love-based books there on Amazon and Kobo and iTunes and other places. But if you start with michelepw.com, you can kind of click on the right website, because I've got multiple websites.
Yeah.
so you can find what you're most interested in finding. And then also Love-Based Business, that's actually my where my blog is. So you can also check out my blog there too.
Perfect. Do you want to tell everybody what PW stands for? Because I'm not going to try to.
Yes, it's Parisa Wasik. So
okay,
yes.
That's not that hard. I probably could have figured that out.
A lot of, I'm surprised at how many people are able to figure it out. But yeah, it's still, it's like, it's not the, spelling it, pronunciating. Right. It's just better, easier to go with Michele. Michele is kind of cute anyways.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue like PW, but yes. Michele, thank you so much for being on the show, giving us so much sound advice. In this time, we happen to be in the pandemic as we're taping this, and even outside of the pandemic, this is the type of expertise that we need in our branded copy. So thank you so much for being with us.
You're very welcome. Yes, we will kill all the zombies. I know we're in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. So we will kill the zombies.
Some days I think I'd rather be in the zombie apocalypse. But anyhow, be that as it may, a whole nother show. Thank you again for being with us. And thank you to all of you in our audience for joining us. And as always, here's hoping that you're branding the experience at a very high level for all those you serve. Take care. Thank you for watching Branding the Experience. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking for a speaker on branding the experience, on workplace culture, or on business strategy, I have a number of different options for you. And my approach is always to entertain first, engage second, and educate third. It's a formula that leaves my audience not only laughing and enjoying, but also learning. So if you want a great speaker on branding, culture building, or strategy, I'd like to hear from you. Simply send me an email at kbator, BATOR, at btcinc.net, or to learn more about the presentations that I've done that have been successful in the past, go to www.btcinc.net.